What's good, YouTube, and welcome back to another YouTube video. It's your girl Bofina1, and so today we're going to be essentially talking about some news here. So it's kind of like a little bit of a POV, but more of a chat. So I want to talk about student loan collections restart May 5th. So for those of you who don't know, a lot of folks regarding student loans, have kind of been like in a deferment or IDR, and a lot of folks have pretty much been able to not have to pay. They just haven't had to pay. So I'm reading this article here. I should be able to put it on the screen, but the federal government on Monday will resume collecting defaulted student loan payments from millions of people for this first time since the start of the pandemic, officials said. The Trump administration said it would collect the debt through a Treasury Department program that withholds payments through tax refunds, wages, and government benefits. The U.S. Education Department has not collected on defaulted loans since March of 2020. Of the nearly 43 million people who owe money, only a little more than a third have made regular payments, the agency said. In the last 5 years, student debt has grown to $1.6 trillion, officials said. Education Secretary Linda McMahon said taxpayers would now be saved from shouldering that cost. American taxpayers are no longer be forced to serve as collateral for irresponsible student loan policies. McMahon said in an April 21st news release announcing the restart of collections. The move comes after years of legal back and forth about loan forgiveness, and at a time when advocates say student borrowers are stretched thin from inflation and growing concerns over the cost of living. So kind of just scrolling down a little bit further. So like the next part says, okay, essentially like what happens now. So all borrowers in default should have received an email from the Office of Federal Student Aid alerting them to the changes. Officials said the email urges borrowers to contact the default resolution group to either make a monthly payment, enroll in an income-based repayment plan, or sign up for loan rehabilitation, a process that can erase a default status if the borrower makes a set of payments during a specific time frame, depending on the type of loan. So I mean, that right there, right, that's, I don't really want to read too much of the article, just because obviously I can link it in the description. You guys can go check it out for yourself, but just right there, that's huge, right? Because a lot of folks really haven't been paying student loans since like 2020. Like a lot of folks have not paid their student loans. They've been in deferment, and so a lot of folks are like freaking out because they're like, okay, I haven't paid my loans, but you got to remember these loans have interest on them. So just because they're in deferment, there's still occurring interest. So some people's student loan amounts come, I guess, May 1st are going to be crazy huge. They'll probably be even bigger than what they initially had signed up for because they haven't paid them in almost 4 or 5 years, if you get what I'm saying. So, it's a big deal, right? But at the same time, I'm going to kind of play, as some people say, like devil's advocate here, in that I still believe that a lot of people bought in to the concept that, and this is not to get political, but just being honest, I think a lot of people bought into the fact that, oh, my student loans will be all forgiven, and pretty much I won't have to worry about that. I never really thought that the government per se was going to get rid of my student loans. I just didn't. I didn't think that they were going to do anything about it. And so I took advantage of the forbearance period where essentially my loans had no interest. So that means that all the money that I was sending in, it was going to the principal. It's almost like in 2020 when people were financing cars for 0% interest. So whatever you financed it for, like there was no interest. So anything that you sent in was all going to the principal versus you send money in, part of it goes to interest and the other part goes to the principal, right? So for me, I played it smart, and I feel like that's what a lot of people should have done. They should have kept making their payments, or they should have at least put the money for their payments in a separate account, and then once they said that the loans were coming out of forbearance, send all that money in before the forbearance ended. That way, you know what I mean? I feel like a lot of people didn't take advantage of it. For me, I came out with like $32,000 that I owed. All of that is paid for. Like I don't owe any more for that. So I took advantage of that. I kept making the payments regardless. And then I was even a little skeptical too, like, oh, are they going to end up forgiving? Am I going to end up dumping all this money, on something that essentially was going to get wiped away? So what I did was I started putting like, that some of that money into a separate account. So then once they made the announcement that, hey, these loans are no longer going to continue to be in forbearance, I didn't, in a sense, like, screw myself. And I feel like that's what's happening with a lot of people. A lot of people thought that, oh, you know, these student loans, you know, were not going to, they were essentially going to go away. And I kind of already had felt like that was essentially not, I just felt like that was not the case personally, but, you know, it is what it is. I also think that personally, the amount of debt that people have to go into for schooling is like crazy, you know. And I feel like that was kind of the biggest issue in general with like 2020, is I feel like it just made people mad lazy, and lazy in the sense of, you know, because the money we was getting like for the COVID checks, and then people was getting all this money for unemployment, and the loans were in forbearance, you know, like I just think people got so much free stuff that they refuse to actually pay the things that they initially had signed up for. You know, like when you go take out student loans, like you have to sign a document, or virtual sign, whatever it is, a document stating that, hey, this is what the interest rates are going to be. This is what I'm saying that I'm going to pay back. And, you know, then you pick a payment plan of like, okay, 10 years, 20 years, 30 years, whatever. And then this is the monthly payment or amount that I'm going to pay, or I'm agreeing to pay. So I feel like with COVID made people really like lazy. Like it made people lazy, and a lot of people really didn't take advantage of COVID. Like they didn't take advantage of all the things that were going on. They just used it as like, oh, well, you know, I'm getting a lot of freebies, so I'm gonna just, you know, take advantage of these freebies and not really work. You know, I think that's a lot of what, personally, I feel like that's a lot of what went on. I could be wrong, but I just feel like that's a lot of what happened during COVID, and it's trickling down now because all that stuff is over with. So people are like, oh, I don't want to pay. It's like, well, that's what you signed up for. And that leads to another thing of, you know, you got to really start really looking at what you're going to school for. A lot of people go to school for stuff where there's really no ROI, and ROI meaning return on investment. So you go to school, let's say you take out 100,000, 50,000, whatever, right? Whatever, of student loan debt, but the job that you come out for is only going to pay you minimum wage or barely above minimum wage. So you have all this debt, but there's really no ROI. So therefore, you're going to be paying those loans forever. It's going to be crippling. And then it's going to get to a point where, you know, you're not going to be able to really get ahead because you're paying so much in loans like rent or, you know, like a mortgage, and you're not really making the amount of money, which is why things like community colleges are starting to really explode, which is why another thing of like, trades, people are starting to go to school for trades where, you know, you don't have to be in school as long, and it's less overall money in debt that you essentially have to take out. So that's the point that I'm getting at here, is I think that people, if anything, it's going to really teach people to stop going to school for things that really are not going to make them any money. And then you come out and you're all this crippling debt, and then it's like, I just think people believe that, oh, their loans were going to be forgiven. Some people got their loans forgiven, but a lot of them that got their loans forgiven is either in a certain profession or they've been paying for like 20 plus years. You know, they've already paid the loan off probably anyway, and some with the interest. So I just think there's no shortcuts, and people just gotta, like, y'all gotta start thinking a little bit more, and stop relying on the government and, I don't know, free money or whatever term you want to call it, for people to come help you out. And these people, they're just not gonna help you out. Like, I hate to say it, but they're not gonna help you out. You have to help yourself. You have to go out there and figure out ways and skill sets to put yourself in a market, or I don't know, pay bracket, or whatever term you want to use, to be able to actually really make, you know, money. But that's my little yap session or thoughts on it. Let me know you guys' thoughts about this down below in the comment section. Do you guys think that people are overreacting? Do you think that people are, you know, being lazy? Do you think that they're correct, that they should be, you know, talking about their student loans and complaining about it? You know, let me know what you guys think down below in the comment section. If you enjoyed the video, be sure to get a like, comment, share, and subscribe, and I'll catch you guys in the next one. Peace.